Economic Indicators, Business Confidence Index. The BCI shows how the business economy is viewed within each country, or it presents the economic situation and climate. The BCI can also be used to check growth and anticipate curves in economic growth. It allows analysis of economic situation in short term and is usually published monthly or quarterly. The interpretation of the BCI depends on the methodology or approach used. However, the outcomes are always interpreted the same. That is, either respondents are optimistic or pessimistic about the outlook of the economy. Every quarter, CEO Art will conduct surveys asking questions about the overall economy, sectorial perspective, own business prospects, and key economic variables outlook. From the inaugural BCI survey, second quarter of 2023, the BCI for Zimbabwe was about 55 points, which is less than the base, 100 points. This implies that the respondents were pessimistic or bearish about the future outlook of the economy. The key issues highlighted for immediate attention in order to improve the business confidence in Zimbabwe are exchange rate, inflation management, narrowing the infrastructure gap, and fighting corruption. As we embark on the third quarter BCI survey, we call upon all key stakeholders to participate and complete the questionnaires for effective contribution towards establishing this significant economic indicator.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Maswera say. The importance of infrastructure for Africa cannot be overstated. I'm talking about how we can Africanize infrastructure development, how we can look at it from a perception of Africa. So the importance of infrastructure for Africa cannot be overstated. More than half the gains in economic growth in Africa are due to infrastructural development. This contribution could be even more significant in the future. And I was very inspired by the presentations given earlier by the property development players who talked before me. This is because infrastructure spending can stimulate broad macroeconomic aggregates such as GDP or total employment. At a local level, the role of infrastructural development in achieving Vision 2030 is vital. Good quality infrastructure is important not only for faster economic growth, but also to ensure inclusive growth which will benefit the majority of the people in the country. Zimbabwe is strategically located at the center of the Southern African region and has emerged as a hub for regional trade and landlocked transport. The country is well positioned to be the investment hub of Southern Africa and has access to world markets as facilitated by a number of bilateral trade agreements as well as its membership in the following organizations. So we have regional organizations like SADC, COMESA, which is over 400 million people, as well as international organizations like the African, Caribbean, and Pacific Nations, ACP, WTO, and now we are also joining the African Continent Free Trade Area. So for us, we really need to look at infrastructure, how we can develop it. We are guided by His Excellency Dr. Edie Mnangagwa's vision and mantra, Nyika inovakwa nevenevai. Only us as Zimbabweans can build Zimbabwe. And I think we all agree with that as Zimbabweans we need to build our country. So transport infrastructure funding in Zimbabwe comes from a number of sources. Number one is government budget allocation. And over the years, emphasis has been placed on funding infrastructure through public sector investment programs, PSIP. However, due to competing priorities, the allocation of funds for road construction and infrastructure through PSIP has not always been adequate. Although there has been a marked improvement in the last 6 years, I think we can all bear witness to the roads, the bridges, the airport, the parliament, the border posts, that have been built in the past 5 years. High levels of investment are required for infrastructure projects, hence the need for African pension funds, life insurance, sovereign funds. There's need for them to step up to invest in such. You look at NASA, an example in Chipinge, building office blocks and shopping malls. You look at ZESA pension funds, building a mall in Marondera. Such initiatives, as well as private sector involvement. I come to private funding, where public-private partnerships involve a partnership between the public and the private sector to finance, build, operate infrastructure projects. The private sector partner can provide financing, technical expertise, and management skills, whilst government provides regulatory oversight and public interest protection. We heard earlier the need to reduce the fees that are paid for approving layouts and planning. That's one issue where government can come on board to make it easier. I think there's one person who appreciated that. So these public-private partnerships, these agreements are mostly found in the form of BOT, build, operate, transfer, build, own, operate, transfer, build, transfer, and operate, as well as build, lease, and transfer. So there are a number of ways that this can be done where government can partner private sector. In debt financing, I think there's need to look at project financing, where financing is off the balance sheet of existing companies to reduce risk, so that these projects can be funded from the cash flows or projected cash flows of these projects that you'll get involved in, looking at your return on investment. And I was very impressed with Ken saying that he won't invest in South Africa, he would rather invest in Zimbabwe, and a building has gone up tenfold over the past 15 years. That says something about Zimbabwe. Let's give a round of applause for Zimbabwe. Debt financing involves securing of loans for infrastructure projects with the expectation of repayment with interest over a set period. So access of lines of credit, that has been one major constraint for us. It's an elephant in the room. Some people accept it, some people don't, but we are under sanctions, and therefore we don't have lines of credit as government to do infrastructure development. And I'd like to point out that over the past 5 years or so, most of the projects done, like the Beitbridge Harare Road, has been funded by Treasury. It's not a loan. If you look at roads that were done in Chimanimani after Cyclone Idai, they were funded by Treasury. It was 100% funded. And this is coming from His Excellency the President's position where you eat what you kill. Don't go into debt, don't overspend from the fiscus. I think that's why one challenge we've had is we don't have lines of credit, but we are looking inwards and using what we have. Africanizing infrastructure development, you look at AFCTA, and with Zimbabwe in particular, we are land linked. We need to look at our railways. We need to look at our airspace. We need to look at our roads and see how we can capitalize on our position. How do we do this? Increase in national budget allocations. So from the national budget, we need more funding for infrastructure development in order to stimulate economic growth and development. We've had the deepening of the Beira port in Mozambique, which has resulted in a lot of traffic now traveling through Mutare, and we need to invest in infrastructure there at the border post at Forbes. These are some of the things that need to be done. More efficient spending. It's important that whatever has been allocated by Treasury under PSIP should be utilized optimally. To achieve this, higher priority should be accorded to projects which have more impact on the country, both in terms of economic growth and development. Therefore, we need value for money. We've had problems in the past where contractors, because they were charging an RTGS, would charge 10 times the value of the work done, and that has been a serious problem in the past, but I think that has been resolved. There's need to strengthen private-public partnerships. The country needs to strengthen the public-private partnership framework. This principally entails creating an enabling environment through which the private sector can thrive. More so, in order to Africanize our PPPs, local financiers and contractors should be given priority on national projects. And I'll repeat, local contractors and financiers should be given priority on national projects. If you look at the Beitbridge Harare Road, I think the country went for 10 years trying to get an Austrian investor to do that road, until our president made a decision that let's go local. And now we're using local contractors to do that road at a fraction of the price we would have paid to the Austrian company. That's a success story for Zimbabwe. And looking at what, yes, you can give a round of applause to that. Just listening to Westprop, Seif and Rawson, it's that confidence that we need from the private sector that Zimbabwe can be a success story. It's that need. We need to reduce the risk. When you go to a bank, you're told you can't get financing for Zimbabwe because the risk is too high. We talk about the negative perceptions in our country. Where are the success stories that will push down the perceived risk for doing business in Zimbabwe? We need to adopt cost-reflective tariffs and user pays principle. To ensure sustainability, it is important that the country adopts the user pays principle and cost-reflective tariffs for infrastructure development projects. In this case, you put in a road, put in toll gates, the investor can recover their money. With electricity, let's charge a tariff that will leave ZESA with a small profit and not in loss like it is at the moment. So, more often than not, local investors shy away from investing in infrastructure because tariffs are heavily regulated and do not allow a return on their investment. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at. Coming to challenges, we do have insufficient investment in infrastructure. This is across Africa. Infrastructure spending is about 3.8% of GDP, whereas India and China spend 4.7% and 8.5% of GDP respectively. The average for developing countries is 5.6%. So as Africa, we do need to look at investing more in infrastructure development. We do have high cost of capital. Local and regional interest rates are usually on the high side, making most infrastructure projects unbankable. And that comes to the risk factor as well. I'm happy the banks are here today. I think the banks are here. Are there any banks here? Yep. Yes. Interest rates. That's an issue that's really hitting us hard. They're not competitive. What can be done about that? We look at capacity limitations. In some cases, lack of properly structured bankable projects is a critical issue and slowing the flow of private capital to infrastructure projects. The issue of currency has been raised here, the need for government's position to be clear, Honourable Minister, on what the position is going forward vis-a-vis the use of the US dollar. I think this has been told even to our principal, the President of the Republic last week, and I'm sure you, Honourable Minister, as well, can raise that issue. It creates uncertainty in the market and people then shy away from investing. If we look at case studies of implemented projects so far, Mutare Harare Plum Tree Road has been rehabilitated. This was in partnership with the Development Bank of Southern Africa. The Harare Beitbridge Road. This project involves the rehabilitation and upgrading of the road from the current 7-meter width to 12.5 meters, in line with the Southern African Transport and Communications Commission. standards. The contract was awarded to 5 local companies, namely Tensa, Fossil Contracting, Masimba Construction, Exodus, and Bitumen World. I referred to this earlier, that this is where local contractors have been shining. To date, 463 kilometers of the Harare Bypass Road have been open to traffic, with various sections of the road at different stages of construction. We expect to open to traffic 500 kilometers by end of year 2023 and complete the widening and upgrading of the 580 kilometer long highway in 2024. This is coming from own resources as a country. The project, which is funded wholly by Treasury, has seen the involved contractors increasing their capacity. This has boded well for the construction sector in Zimbabwe, which has seen increased competitiveness. If you look at the Mbudzi interchange, the project is being funded through a loan from Fossil Mines and implemented by Fossil Contracting as the main contractor. This is a private sector initiative and all companies are wholly Zimbabwean. Construction is underway at Mbudzi interchange with 51.5% complete. 4 of the bridges have already been done. The project is expected to be completed in the first quarter of 2024. The Harare-Kanyemba and Kanyemba border post, the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructural Development has engaged a local firm, Exodus and Company, and Nue Barrow Consortium to upgrade from gravel road to a surface standard section that is 150 kilometers long from Mahue to Kanyemba, to rehabilitate, widen and upgrade the remaining 204 kilometers through a loan as well. This project is set to support government's plan to create a trade logistics hub, which will be the first of its kind. To date, construction of 15 kilometers has been completed and open to traffic. I referred earlier to reconstruction works in Zimbabwe, or particularly in Chimanimani, where I come from. I can't not mention my constituency, Mr. Lina, otherwise I won't be re-elected. We had a cyclone in Chimanimani in 2019, and government came in and showed that we have the capacity as a country to construct infrastructure. Bridges have been washed away, roads have been washed away, and using government resources, roads have been built back better, bridges have been replaced, roads from Kopa to Jopa have been tarred, Machongwe to Rusitu have been tarred, working in one case with Africa Development Bank as well. Coming to PPPs, you all know the Birchnow Bridge on the 20-cent coin. Do you remember the 20-cent coin? Yes. The Birchnow Bridge unfortunately hasn't been able to carry trucks above 25 tons for some years. It has outlived its lifespan, and it's more expensive to repair it than replace. So as a public-private partnership, the Birchnow Bridge is now going to be replaced by Bikita Minerals, who as part of their corporate social responsibility are going to build an alternative bridge below the current bridge. And this will link Masvingo and Manicaland provinces. It will open up trade between Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. That's an example of a PPP that is happening as we speak. In conclusion, with the advent of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, there's need to step up and grasp the opportunities we have as a nation. Through collaboration between the government of Zimbabwe, led ably by His Excellency, the President, Dr. Idi Mnangagwa, the private sector, local banks, pension funds, investment and development partners, to ensure connectivity, competitiveness of our wonderful nation, Zimbabwe, as well as the African continent at large. So whilst we do dwell a lot on the negatives, I think as a country, let's also start looking at the positives. Let's look at the success stories. Let's focus on what we can do for our country, and not only what the country can do for you. What you can also do for the government, and not only what government should do for you. If we change our mindset, have a positive view, we can move this great nation forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Another round of applause for that encouraging speech and an appeal for us to actually change our mindset. And actually that's quite important. And I think from last year, what we talked about was also changing the mindset in terms of looking at yourself as a fountain for the person next to you. One of the key things we want to encourage for the roundtable is to make sure that when you speak to the next person, you are genuinely asking how you can advance their business. And I think it's also worth honoring Ambassador Koko from Malawi. If you can maybe stand up and greet our members who are here. We have got a whole chapter in Malawi and we have got His Excellency with us, joining us. A big round of applause. Thank you for coming through. I think I will open up to the next panelist. And given the leadership of the Minister, what are your thoughts as private sector on the challenge thrown to us? Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mafukidze. Thank you, Honorable Minister. I think in Zimbabwe, the construction industry is one of the key economic drivers of the country. And there are a lot of major projects that are happening in the construction industry, which are revolutionizing the country, the infrastructure as well as the economy. I think as contractors, we've touched in various sectors and ministries in terms of construction. If you're looking at the housing infrastructure through the National Human Settlements Policy, the target was to have 250,000 housing units by 2025. But we've managed to surpass that target. And now the target is 1 million houses by the year 2030. And this has created over 3 million jobs since the inception of NDS1. And also stimulated the production of various materials like your cement, your hardware, bricks, amongst other construction commodities. Going back to your ministry, the infrastructure, the Transport and Infrastructure Development Ministry, where you spoke about the Mudzi roundabout interchange. We're also looking at the construction of the biggest project in Zemu of the Robert Gabriel Mugabe Airport, which now has a carrying capacity of over 1 million travelers per year. This also has an impact on the state-of-the-art transport networks, the Harare Bay Bridge Road that you've spoken of. And I'm proud to say the local contractors have done a great deal. They've done a good job. And I think the only challenge will be speeding, otherwise the road network is now fantastic. And looking at the Harare Chirundu Road, which is coming up next, that's another opportunity to also open trade gateway, as Zimbabwe is the gateway in the SADC region for trade. If we're going to the energy sector, coming closer to here, Matebelele North, Wange Power Station expansion, where units 7 and 8 have been expanded or have been commissioned. This was done through the special purpose vehicle between the Zimbabwe Power Company, ZESA, as well as Sino-Hydro. It also shows that contractors are playing a major role in the different sectors. When we go to mining, the Maniza Steel Plant in Vuma, in Chirumans, which is now about 70% complete. There's been a lot of employment creation there, knowledge transfer, as well as industrial growth. And looking at agriculture, creation of new dams and irrigation canals, like the Chivu Dam, the Chekerana Dam. This has also put the country on the map to say the local contractors can do this job. We don't even have to look outside our borders. Somebody spoke about the smart cities, maybe in the cyber cities. Our smart cities where the Mount Hampton cyber city where the new parliament is now housed. This mixed-use development is coming through with different technologies and innovations that are, I think, beneficial to the economy and the country, as we are digitalizing a lot of things. And looking at other countries like London, Singapore, Taiwan, who have come up with such smart cities or cyber cities, I think we are in the right direction. And like you said, we need these private-public partnerships where the private players will then come up and come up with synergies with the government and us as the contractors as well to build this Zimbabwe which we want and keep growing this country and economy. The opportunities that are there also, I think you spoke about those public-private partnerships, but I also think we need to also look at like the railway, like you mentioned, that we can look at railway and ease congestion. Let me take an example that I was speaking to with Mr. Mafukidze earlier on. Highland Park is a very good infrastructure project that has come up, but the road network hasn't been expanded. So you find there's a lot of congestion. So I think we need to synergize some of these things and say if we're coming up with an infrastructure, a type of infrastructure, let's have all the players once and for all in one room before the building even comes up or before the road is even constructed, and see which areas each and every player has to look at and make sure we come up with a good product, a final product that is good for use and that makes sense. I think for now, that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Joylene, for that intervention. And I like your idea of players coming together. I think I grew up in Chitungwiza, but what is interesting was every time a new development came up, there would actually be a school that's built there, and also, I'm not too sure, but there would also be a beer hall for the community to be happy. So there was some thinking about making sure the community is well catered for, as opposed to just going out there without looking at a lot of the amenities that are there. So I think really, let's be positive. There's a lot of things that are going on, and a big round of applause. I think I was talking to one of the delegates, Mr. Jurelia, and he was pointing out that cement is actually out of supply. Despite that, now we've got a lot more cement plant in the country, just demonstrating how much construction is going on. But there is need for us to actually harness more productivity come out of that. I would like to maybe just ask if there's one comment from anyone from the floor. Okay, so very convincing, and round of applause to our panelists. And I'd like to hand over to the MCs for help me thank our panelists as they go down, and a big round of applause for them to ease their walk. Thank you. I will hand over to our MCs for the day.
Economic indicators, Business Confidence Index. The BCI shows how the business economy is viewed within each country, or it presents the economic situation and climate. The BCI can also be used to check growth and anticipate curves in economic growth. It allows analysis of economic situation in short term and is usually published monthly or quarterly. The interpretation of the BCI depends on the methodology or approach used. However, the outcomes are always interpreted the same. That is, either respondents are optimistic or pessimistic about the outlook of the economy. Every quarter, CEO Art will conduct surveys asking questions about the overall economy, sectorial perspective, own business prospects, and key economic variables outlook. From the inaugural BCI survey, second quarter of 2023, the BCI for Zimbabwe was about 55 points, which is less than the base, 100 points. This implies that the respondents were pessimistic or bearish about the future outlook of the economy. The key issues highlighted for immediate attention in order to improve the business confidence in Zimbabwe are exchange rate, inflation management, narrowing the infrastructure gap, and fighting corruption. As we embark on the third quarter BCA survey, we call upon all key stakeholders to participate and complete the questionnaires for effective contribution towards establishing this significant economic indicator.